Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back. It's not really a review, it's not really a preview, it's a bit of everything. We're just going to wing it, I think, today. We've got plenty to talk about. We'll quickly touch on the Swansea game, the Boro game coming up, and everything else in between. That's probably going to end up going out of date by the time this podcast goes live because the January transfer window is always changing. Joins us today is Chris. Hi mate.
Hello Gavin.
Hello, and hello to the listeners. So, we did record a podcast at the weekend after the Swansea game, but there were some technical difficulties, so apologies this one's late. We don't really want to touch too much on that game though, because, well, it was shit, wasn't it, Chris? I don't. That's the top and bottom of it. We sat and analysed it the nth degree at the weekend in the pod that never made it, and to be honest, I've kind of forgot about it since then. I've done a good job of putting it to the back of my mind. I don't know if I'm a bit distracted or what at the minute, but it's not one we're going to remember for very long, I don't think.
No, it's one of them, wasn't it? It was a bit of a shame because I thought we were so good for the first kind of 15, 20 minutes. What minute did he get sent off? I have to remind myself.
18th, I think. Yeah.
18 minutes. So like for 17 minutes or something, it looked so good, and it's another frustrating one though, isn't it? Because I just thought, and I put in the preview as well for people who read the preview, I thought Swansea were another side just there for the taking. I thought, and actually the game showed that. First 20 minutes, there was only one side going to win that game. If that was kind of on equal footing, there was only one side going to win it, and that was us. We were much the better side. Swansea were nothing really. They were there for the taking. It was a tough one to take actually, because that should have been 3 points on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's really difficult, isn't it, when you try to sit back and analyse a performance and it's all caveated by that red card. So, every one of them goals we conceded, I was frustrated with the defending, the positioning, some of the decisions that Tony Mowbray made. But, you're trying to judge it on a game where we were pretty much playing with one arm tied behind our backs for most of it. So it's a tough one, really. But there is stuff to learn from the game, I think. I think in particular the goals we conceded, regardless of the fact we did have 10 men, like I said, there were things wrong with them. The decision at half time to swap round Lille and Pierre and try Hume was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it? We saw in all three of the goals. I think the first two, Lille and Pierre was caught miles out of position. Third one, Trey Hume tries to control the ball facing goal with his right foot because he's on the wrong side of the pitch, which leads to them scoring, and a bunch of other things happened after that. So I'm actually finding it really difficult to sort of pin that on the players, because I think it was working so well first half and it didn't work so well in the second half. And you've got to kind of sympathise a little bit with Mowbray, I guess, because he wasn't planning for that. Nobody planned for the red card, and he was forced to make a decision on the flip, and it didn't pay off. He took off Roberts, which sort of weakened us down the right hand side. Half time, decided to flip the fullbacks over, didn't work. And to be honest, I don't know what he can really take from that going into Middlesbrough, because he can't play Luke O'Nien, so we've obviously had to plan without him. But I mean, I don't know about you, is there anything we can really take away from that into this game other than maybe don't play Lyndon Gooch right back? Because I think we saw maybe him and Ahmad struggle together a little bit, but other than that, struggling to really pick too much at it.
Well, I think, just to start with Luke O'Nien, because that was obviously, you've kind of captured that as like the big turning point of the game, and it was, obviously, as I said before, I think it was 3 points for us if on an equal footing, if Luke O'Nien hadn't done his thing. But starting with Luke O'Nien in terms of lessons, I mean, I think the weeks leading up to that, he'd purposely played that character on the pitch for us, hadn't he, where he's kind of winding the opposition up and he was going in with those hard tackles, which
and to good effect, to be fair.
No, I was just about to say, don't get us wrong, we all love it and it's fantastic and all this sort of stuff, but I think he's learned a lesson where that line is, where he needs to be on there. He needs to, and it's brilliant. I love the fact that he wants to get right on the edge for games, because I think, that's where Luke O'Nien does his best thing, where he's right on the edge and he's just torn that line. But I think it's a good lesson for Luke O'Nien that he kind of realised where that line is, because
Yeah,
You know, we watched it back again and again and again, and when the pass was made, because it was just a pass into kind of, you know, the halfway line, wasn't anywhere dangerous. But Luke O'Nien had already decided when the pass was already played, like 5 seconds earlier than when he left the ground, that he was going to fly in and smash someone.
Yeah.
He'd already decided that. So he needs to learn that lesson, that there's no need for that in that sort of area. He needs, if he's going to wind players off, if he's going to play that character, do it so he doesn't put us at a disadvantage. But it's like I said, it's another lesson he'll learn, and you know, if he can put these lessons together, and the character he is, you know 100% he'll learn from it, and he already put that statement out, didn't he? After he put like a message on, I don't know, was it Instagram or whatever it was? He put it out on Twitter or whatever it was. He said himself, he said, "Yeah, I hold my hands up. I didn't get it right. I got it wrong." And he'll learn from it, and he'll come back a better player. But it was a rush of blood to the head, and a tackle that didn't need to be made in an area of the pitch that didn't really warrant it, to be honest.
It was interesting reading the comments on all the videos flying around on Twitter of the tackle from accounts which are probably followed by fans of every club. It was interesting reading fans of other clubs say that they're not surprised that he, you know, it was Luke O'Nien. I think we don't see it really, but he's probably got away with quite a bit over the years. And a lot of fans of other clubs have noticed it because he's probably got away with it against them, sort of big tackles or bit of shithousery, and we love it. Like I would never want him to take that out of his game, but there's a time and a place, isn't there, for a tackle like that, and that wasn't it. If he makes that sort of 20 minutes later in the game, where it's not after a massively contentious decision, which, you know, the way the game went, nearly everything was a contentious decision. But if he makes that at a different period of the game, he probably gets a yellow card. I noticed on the slowing down the footage, the referee actually went to his yellow card pocket first, and then he gets surrounded by the Swansea players and goes to the red card pocket. Not saying it wasn't a red, to be honest. If that had been on one of our players, I'd have been shouting for a red card. But I've also seen them giving us yellows. So it is what it is. I mean, we've moved on from that now. We're looking ahead to the next game. It's really unfortunate that we're without Luke O'Nien. I saw the Man U fans crying about losing Casemiro for the Arsenal game, and I was like, solidarity. We know how it feels because we're missing our Casemiro for this one. Nah, but in all seriousness, it's a game where you really want a player like Luke O'Nien to be available, and it is what it is. We've just got to get on with it, you know. Middlesbrough's going to be a tough opponent, and yeah, it's just a shame. He's probably really kicking himself that he's got a suspension ahead of probably the biggest game we've had in a while, because it's huge. They're going for it with us towards the top end of the table. They're in really good form, and yeah, you want your players like Luke O'Nien, and do you think it's a derby? I don't know whether to call it a derby or not.
You know what? For me, it's in that it's halfway between a normal team and Newcastle. It's in that gap that it doesn't.
It's always felt like a big game to me, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I don't know whether for me, Chris. I don't know any Middlesbrough fans. So, but a lot of Sunderland fans do know Middlesbrough fans. We have a lot of fans, obviously, in like sort of the Durham area, even Teesside, Hartlepool, where there's probably quite a bit of a blend of the two fan bases. So I suppose it probably depends on where you're from, doesn't it? Whether you class it as a derby, but it is a big game, though. Yeah. It's always been a big game in my life.
I remember between kind of, you know, when Peter Reid came, between that period and right through the Peter Reid era, when, you know, they had Robson and they had, you know, when we were battling with them at the top of the championship and all that sort of stuff. Those sort of years when we were kind of going up and down together quite often. But
yeah.
During those years in the early 2000s, I remember some games where, you know, there was kind of, you know, there was bother on the bridge, on the Weymouth Bridge.
Oh, there was always bother. It was weird. Do you remember that coming out? It was like a war zone. I never got that. I would love to know the reason why they used to just let Middlesbrough fans and Sunderland fans mingle after the games, because there was hell on every single time. And I think it was only maybe 10 years ago when they thought, yeah, let's separate them now, you know. But there used to always be hell on, which I don't know whether that was more instigated by them or not, but, you know, it's a bit more needle.
quite often bother at the riverside, where it is, and you had to go over that wasteland and all that sort of stuff back in the day when it was new. But yeah, for me, it's kind of not close to that feeling of playing Newcastle, but it's more than playing everyone else. It's in that void in between somewhere. It's definitely a bigger game than the Burnleys or the Wiggins and all of that sort of lot.
It's always irritated me though that sort of our fans have a tendency to trip over themselves to say it's not a derby. And it works against us because Middlesbrough take it really seriously. Yeah. They treat it like a derby game. And our record against Middlesbrough is shit. And I think a lot of it is to do with that. I don't know whether, and you know what it's like when we play Newcastle. There's a different feeling around everything, sort of the week building up to the game. Like, the players have no choice but to understand the meaning of the game because everybody they meet on the street, everybody they see when they're out doing their shopping, the lead up to the game on social media and everything, and it's treated like a big occasion. And the Middlesbrough game isn't. It just isn't because it hasn't got that same feeling as a Newcastle game. But Middlesbrough take it very, very seriously. They treat this like it's a big occasion, and it seems to always count against us. Now, I know that this is a little bit different because it's at the Stadium of Light, so it's going to be, there's going to be a big crowd. I think the fans will be up for it, but I just hope that we treat it just as seriously as Boro do. Now, the difference maker, I think, could be Tony Mowbray because he's had a foot in both camps. He was a Middlesbrough player for a long time. He's managed there. There's probably nobody better to explain to these players, the lads who don't really know much about Sunderland, the lads from outside the area this week, just how important this game actually could be. And even if we don't think it is a derby, I would like him to treat it like one because the players will take it more seriously. They'll give it that extra 10%. And I'd just like to think that, regardless of what you think of this game, it is very important because if we win this game, this puts us right back in the mix. We've had a couple of difficult results, and you win this against a team who are in good form, you're looking up again, aren't you?
Yeah, and you know what it is? I've always had this problem. It might sound a bit like kind of Roy Keane talking here, but I've always had this problem about the derby days and giving it that extra 10% against Newcastle, or pushing a bit further against Middlesbrough and all this sort of stuff. I think every game, you're looking to get the early tackles in. You're looking to get to the ball first. You're looking to win that header, and that should be a kind of a given.
Yeah.
What sometimes happens in derbies, which really frustrates us sometimes, is that there's too much emphasis on that, and you forget about that. You forget about playing football, and it's all about getting or getting a dig in, or getting an elbow in, or getting that tough challenge in, which should be part of every game. But we've got good players. If we get the ball down the deck and remember that's a game of football, we can beat any side. So I don't want us to get bogged down in that side of the game because I think our strengths are getting the ball down, getting it wide. We've got good players in the final third and doing that part of it. So yes, winning the ball first, getting to it first, giving that extra 10%. You try and do that every week, but we shouldn't lose sight of kind of winning the game because I think we're as good as anyone in this division.
Yeah, we can give anybody a game, and it was really disappointing that we gave such a poor account of ourselves last time we played Boro. Yeah. But I, to be honest, at the time, and I still do in hindsight, hinged a lot of that on the Ross Stewart news, which came like 20 minutes before kick-off or whatever, because, again, game plan went out the window. It totally rocked us. There's no getting away from that. Your best player gets injured in the warm-up. That's a big blow to your confidence and everything, and it's a big boost to Middlesbrough's confidence. They weren't like a million miles better than us, but they were better than us. I think that was one of the occasions in the early months of the season where we turned around and we said, we haven't really been outplayed by anybody, but the Boro game we probably deserved to lose because we were shit. So there's that as well. The players are going to be probably looking to make amends. They'll remember that occasion. Ross Stewart will remember that occasion and feel like it was such a disappointment for him to have missed so much football after that game. He probably has a little bit of resentment that he missed out, and he missed out for so long after that. So I think there's enough motivators there that we shouldn't really. You're right. It shouldn't matter about this being a derby occasion because I think it's a given anyways. And to be honest with these players, they tend to, more often than not, start really well. We saw that against Swansea. I thought the first 10 minutes, the intensity was brilliant.
Yeah.
We got in their faces. We knew that the way to sort of get the upper hand early in the game against Swansea was to get all over them, press them, harry them, don't let them have the ball. When we do have the ball, we don't take 3 or 4 touches. It's 1, 2 touch, out your feet quick, get it wide. I think it's got to be the same in this game. I think, the game plan has to be similar. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know loads about Middlesbrough because I only know what I'm told, which is, well, the 4th in the table. Since Carrick came in, they've been brilliant, pretty flawless, to be honest. They've been outstanding. He's totally took them back a couple of steps in terms of, the overcomplication that probably came with it tactically with Wilder, and he's now just playing, a very pretty similar style to us, from what I'm told. On the front foot, getting it wide. They've got a lad up front who's scoring goals. So, for me, just get at them. Have a go. Give it 15, 20 minutes. Let them know we're there. And play like the home team and play like the better side. Because I think you're right. We can beat anybody on our day. I'm certainly not fearing Middlesbrough, regardless of how well they're doing and how good some of their players are and all the rest of it. It's 90 minutes of football. Anybody can win it. And, we've got the players to do it, haven't we?
Yeah, and you're right. If we come out against Middlesbrough like we did against Swansea, I think for the first 15, 20 minutes, until the sending off, basically, that we pinned Swansea in, and Swansea couldn't get out. They couldn't get a grip of the ball. They couldn't put a foot on it, and we pinned them in. We were knocking it wide, and a goal was coming. And this is the other point I wanted to make, actually, that especially at home, what we're quite often guilty of is not taking advantage of those periods in the game where we put a team under a lot of pressure. So when we pin a team in for long periods of time, and we sometimes play some nice stuff, and we knock it around nice, and it looks quite nice, but we don't create too many chances. And the same happened in the opening period against Swansea, where we pinned them in, put them under a lot of pressure, but we didn't really create that many chances. And what would be good is if we come out the block, start fast, exactly what we did against Swansea, but really put them under pressure, get the balls into the box, get it into Stewart's feet, get him in behind, all of those things, just get some early shots on goal to start kind of building up that momentum and kind of putting them under pressure, because that early period of the game, that could kind of set the tone for the rest of it and kind of make them drop 10, 15 yards. And we need to do that a bit more at home, because, like I said, our home form hasn't been the best this season. But when we've put teams under pressure, I mean, we were the better team for the first half against West Brom. We were a better team against Burnley, and those are two of the better sides in the division. We were better side. I think we were best side against Norwich, and the teams that are fancied in this division. But we can't sustain it for 90 minutes, and we need to start doing that and really kind of getting those chances, getting those goals, and putting teams to the sword at home.
Their away form's pretty outstanding. I'm just looking at it. I think they've won 5 of the last 6 away from home, and they're scoring goals as well. And the only other thing that really stands out to us is that they don't keep a great deal of clean sheets, and we do have goals in us. I know we need to brush up on creating chances and stuff, but as long as you've got Ross Stewart and Ahmad on the pitch and Jack Clark, I think you've got a great chance. The other thing is as well, which I hadn't thought about, but you think about Patrick Roberts going off early in that Swansea game, and he'd started pretty well. He'll have been gutted to come off, probably a bit pissed off that he was the one who made way, and this is his old team. So I'd be throwing him straight in and saying, look, you took one for the team last week. Go out there and show them what they're missing. You were at Middlesbrough. Go and show them what you're made of. And I'm thinking he could be a key player in this game. I know you're natural to point to probably Clark, Stewart, Ahmad, maybe even Dan Neil, but I think Roberts could really be the difference in this match, because he's due a really, really good performance where he just turns it on, like he did in that Reading game, for instance. He's due a big performance, and I'm looking at him to maybe be the difference in this game, because on his day he's outstanding. Like, I know we've got some really good players, but on his day he is brilliant, and fingers crossed he's the one who comes up with the goods, because it would be nice for somebody and for Mowbray to get one over on his old club as well.
Yeah, Yeah, and you're right. I mean, looking at Middlesbrough kind of away from home, I mean, you're right. They've obviously got kind of Wilder's record impacting some of that way. He didn't get off to the best of starts, but looking at their stats, you're talking about them scoring goals. I mean, they've scored the most goals away from home in the division, and away from home again. In terms of conceding, they've got the joint worst away record away from home as well. The other thing that points to how they play at home is that they've only drawn once out of the 14 away from home this season. So they've won 6 and lost 7 away. So they don't draw many games at home. And if you look at that, obviously they score goals, they concede goals. So it looks like, we talk about teams that come to the Stadium of Light and try and park the bus a little bit, and we can't get in behind them. Looking at their stats, if that's something to go off, that they score a lot of goals and concede a lot of goals, it looks like Middlesbrough are on the front foot away from home. And if that's the case, I think that might be better for us, because I think we struggle more against the sides. I point to the who was it? It was Blackpool and Preston. Those two goalless draws. Where those two both just sat in and just wanted us to break them down, and we couldn't, and it ended up 0-0 in both games. I think we're better against the sides like, well, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, against the likes of Middlesbrough, who come out, give us the space as well, and they concede chances. So it could be one of them. I mean, you're looking at two kind of attacking teams, because they like I said, they're the division's top scorers away from home. If we can play anything like what we've seen in quite a lot of away performances, and some of the recent home performances where we've scored goals like Millwall, it could be quite a high scoring game actually. I might look at some odds after this, but I wouldn't be surprised in a high scoring game.
Yeah, I was just looking at their team. They play with a back four. They play 3 attacking midfielders behind the striker, which is Matt Crooks, bizarrely. I think he's a midfielder, but it seems to be working because he's in amongst the goals. Chuba Akpom's their top scorer, who plays in the 10 position. I think since Carrick's came in, he stopped using Duncan Watmore, and he started playing Marcus Force, who they signed from Brentford, who plays out wide, and that's been working. So yeah, 2 attacking teams. I think in the game down at the Riverside, it was Ryan Giles, the left back, who was the biggest threat on the pitch. He battered us down that left hand side, so he's one to watch out for. We haven't really spoke much about us. It's a bit of a tough one to work out, because I know we have quite a lot of injured players, but some eagle-eyed observers noticed in the training photos and the photos of the players down the beach walking around and stuff that there was a handful of the lads who've been out injured. I think Adjia was there, Dennis Serkin, Pritchard was in amongst it. So, I mean, if them 3 were back for this game, that would be a huge boost, because I think we're just missing that balance. We haven't got that left-hand side balance that we need, but we are really lacking those players down that side. So it would be nice, even if we just played one of Elise or Serkin and maybe got an hour out of them, replaced one with the other, that would be ideal, because that was the thing on Saturday going back to Swansea game. We didn't have any balance down the left. We had no proper left-footed defender on that side. So get one of them back in, that would be good. And to be honest, I would like Pritchard back for this game. I know I've said play Ahmad, play Roberts, but Pritchard, again, could be useful in this game just for setting the tone. I like the way he sets the tone and gets in amongst it and presses really well from the front. He's been out a few weeks, so it might be tough for him, but if we can get a good hour out of Alex Pritchard, that would be good. But I don't know what I would do, to be honest. It's a bit difficult at this stage, as we record this. We haven't heard from Tony Mowbray. We don't know who's back. And to be honest, if he's got his head screwed on, I wouldn't be revealing too much to the press. I wouldn't be telling them who's going to be available for this game. So I would like to think we've got a couple of lads back. But yeah, if Elise is back, I think he's the one who comes in just to give us that balance and a bit of height that we're probably going to need, because they're as good as they've been playing. They're quite aerially proficient. Crooks up top is a handful. So get a few lads who can handle him, and we might be all right.
Yeah, I'm expecting maybe to see them on the bench. I'd be surprised with their lack of kind of games recently and how long they've been out, because they've all had decent stints out. It's not like they've only just missed one game or anything like that. They've missed a good chunk there, and I'd be surprised if a game with high intensity like the Middlesbrough game's going to be, if he throws them into the starting 11. I fully expect actually the lineup to be, other than that change he makes at the back for 09, whoever's going to come in there. He's got obviously that decision, but my guess it'll be the same side as what went out against Swansea, because, like I said, I mean, we started really well, and that red card completely threw everything out of the window, and we looked good, especially with Roberts, Ahmed and Clark behind Stewart. I mean, it's a massive call if he brings in Pritchard, who's been out for a while, and drops one of them who looked good until that sending off. The other thing as well, I mean, just talking about that kind of attacking down the left, and I know it was maybe down to the sending off, but we were looking at last week at kind of how Ahmad was trying to kind of play on the counter, and he wasn't quite kind of helping the fullback out as much. So hopefully we haven't got that issue, because Ahmad was kind of started off in the middle, but it's something we need to be aware of, because they do attack well down the flanks. And the way we play with that three, I think if it is Evans and Neil, which I guess it probably will be in front of the back four, they've almost got to protect out wide. So they've almost got to drop in and double up with the fullbacks, because I don't think whoever's out wide, whether it's Roberts, Ahmad, Clark, they're not going to double up. I don't think they're going to work back as much as we'd like them to. So I think Evans and Neil have got a big job on kind of protecting the fullbacks as much as doing their job in the middle on Sunday. But yeah, it's going to be interesting how we line up, because to see if he makes any changes if people are back. But I'm not expecting many changes.
Nah, I do think though, if we've got a left-footed defender fit, we have to play them, just because Gooch isn't a left back. I mean, I appreciate a lot of his strengths and stuff, and in games like this he could be useful, because he does get it and knows what it means and plays with intensity, and he scored earlier in the season playing a bit further up. I don't know whether that's an option at some stage maybe, but I wouldn't start him at left back again. So I mean, if we've got an Elise or a Sirkin who we can get an hour out of, that's got to be better than that, I think. Just I'm a little bit worried about the way we conceded some of them goals last weekend. So if that option's on, if we can get a preferably Elise on the pitch to play on that left hand side, I would go for it. But it just totally depends who's available, doesn't it? I mean, we're guessing at this stage. We don't know who's going to be available. But I think you're right. There's probably not going to be a great amount of changes, and there's no real need to make a great amount of changes, because, like you said, the way we played that first 15 minutes, everything was fantastic, and I think it's going to be one of them games where both teams just go at it. I don't think they're going to. They don't strike me as the type of team who are going to sit in and with 11 men behind the ball. They might surprise us, but given that playing on the front foot has worked so well for them since Carrick came in, why would they? Why would they come here and sit in? So I think it's going to be a bit of a ding dong. I think there might be quite a lot of goals in this game. And I can see it being a high scoring draw. Yeah,
I had 2-2 in my mind before, but that's the other thing, because looking at the stats, Middlesbrough don't draw many games. One out of 14 this season they've drawn. But like I said, I mean, I don't think it's going to be one of those. Quite often in these games, you just get games where the two teams just cancel each other out. And I could well be eating my words next week, where it's a completely dull 0-0 and nothing happens and all this sort of stuff. But I don't think it's going to be one of them. I don't think that they're going to cancel each other out. I think you've got two teams who Middlesbrough are flying. As you said, Middlesbrough coming into the game, and they're at the point now where they're just believing they're going to win every game, and that's their outlook at the minute with the run they're on. So yeah, it sounds like on paper it sounds like it could be a good game, but. We'll see. I hope it's not one of those where they just end up cancelling each other out. But I don't see it at this stage.
Can I bother you for a prediction or not? Are you going to go for one?
Well, I said 2-2, so I'll go for that.
I think I'm with you there. I'd just see it being a high scoring draw. So yeah, 2-2. And to be honest, that wouldn't be a terrible result. It would be all right. I
was just about to say I'll take that. I'll take a point. And that's not necessarily saying I'm kind of scared about Middlesbrough or anything like that. I just think, in a game like this, it with two sides who are flying, scoring goals, looking good going forward, it can just be a toss of a coin, and it could come. Look at the Swansea game. I mean, I know it sounds obvious, but it came down to one moment of, where a player had a rush of blood to the head. It came down to, and then after that, it came down to what side the referee landed on. Was it red or yellow? Completely changed the game. And this could be the same. Could just come off someone's backside. A referee's decision that, us not getting a penalty, which is something we seem to be talking about every other week. So I think it's one of them games where it's that tight. It's two good teams. It could just come down to one moment of brilliance or stupidity from an official, and that'll settle it.
More likely the official, I think. Couple of things around the game. There's going to be an applause for a minute on the 21st minute of the game for Fletcher Jackson, who's a young lad who died on New Year's Day. I think the club have helped out his family with that one to get that going, so that's good. So yeah, people keep an eye out for that. And the other thing I've noticed is Spirit of 37 had planned a card display for the game, but that's been blocked by the safety advisory group, which they've put a little statement out on their Twitter account. So unfortunately that's not going ahead, but I'm sure the banners and everything else will be there. So if you get a flag, make sure you wave it. Why we are on, let's look at transfers. Why not? The only thing I will say, it might date this podcast, so let's keep that in mind while we're talking. Why not start with departures? So rumoured departure of Bailey Wright at Aberdeen. I think that was in the Scottish papers over the last couple of days. Would that surprise you? I wouldn't be surprised to say Bailey go, to be honest, but I know he's a big character about the club and really well liked, and he's always there if he's needed and stuff. But to be honest, I think we'll probably sign a centre half with lads coming back from injury and stuff. He's probably not going to play much, is he?
No, and I think last week kind of told you a lot, didn't it? He was dropped to the bench, and then when we needed to bring a defender on, Danny Bart kind of got the nod ahead of him. So I think by that, Bailey Wright's probably looking and saying, "Well, I know my place." But again, you don't know these things behind the scenes. Bailey Wright, he might be getting paid a decent wage. He might be kind of happy with his place at this stage in his career. He might be saying, "Well, why don't I just play this season out, wait till the summer, kind of assess things then." January's always a strange time to make those sort of moves, and who's to say we might not get injuries. But I'm sure Mowbray values him and tells him as such, because the character around the place, he's the type you need. So I wouldn't be surprised if he moved, but having said that, I'm not sure he will. I think he'll wait till the summer.
Nah, I'm with you. It's probably just going to be a balancing of the books if he does leave. If we get rid of it, I don't think he'll be short of offers, and I think the fact that he was signed on League One wages probably benefits us and him, because finding him a club probably won't be too difficult. You'll probably get one north of the border in League One, and lots of clubs would love him because he's got so many upsides to having Bailey Wright in your squad. But for a team who are going for the playoffs in the Championship, he's probably, I mean, we've talked about this in the last few weeks, he's probably not good enough for what we need right now. But I mean, the other side of what I've just said with the low wages and stuff, it might just be deemed, keep him around till the summer and then move on. There might be better offers for him as well. So yeah, I either way, I'm happy for him to leave, because for his benefit, it's probably good for him to crack on with his career. But if he stayed, I'd be happy too, just to keep him around the place and sort of be a good influence on the younger players, because you can't have too many of those types, can you? Fairly young squad. We probably do need a handful of Bailey Wrights, Corey Evanses, Alex Pritchards, just to keep that grounding in the team. The only other bit of outgoing news, and it's probably not an outgoing for this window, but Sky Sports are reporting that Newcastle United and RB Leipzig are keeping tabs on Edouard Michou, which is a bit of a surprise. But can you see that happening? Can you see him going to Newcastle? Is that just a pie in the sky rumour, do you think? I don't know. He hasn't played enough, has he?
No. Well, I think it's one of these where my guess would be that a lot of the big clubs, and even a lot of the medium-sized clubs, because I know the likes of Brighton have done it a lot in recent years, where they've probably got a database of kind of young players of ones to watch and see how they're progressing and all that sort of stuff, and they probably periodically send scouts out just to see how they're getting on and how they look and all this sort of stuff, because they'll take everything into account, playing in the Championship, not playing many games recently, but some of these lads, even if they're not getting game, teams will know how much talent they've got, and it's clear. I mean, we've seen flashes of Michu that everyone can see he's got talent. It's just, stepping up into the Championship Saturday, Tuesday is a kind of a different matter to showing a decent touch on the pitch. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of clubs are monitoring a lot of, especially our young players, and I reckon there's a whole host of clubs watching Bennett, seeing how he progresses, because he's only 18 and almost using us as go on, you train him up, and as soon as he looks good, we'll stick a bid in. So yeah, I imagine this goes on all the time, and they're keeping tabs on all of these types of young players, and it just so happens that we've got a lot of them at the minute.
Yeah. Incomings then, I mean, like I say, by the time this pod goes live, we might have actually confirmed some of these players. It's usually the case when we record, so apologies if this dates slightly, but Isaac Lihadji from Lille. Now, this isn't a name I'm familiar with at all. Hadn't heard of the kid till that one came out in the last few days, but it was reported in the French media that Lihadji, who's a Lille player, he's formerly of Marseille, which is, of course, the team Kirill supports, so there might be some link there. But Lihadji, yeah, apparently was on Wearside at the Academy of Light last week for a visit. That's been pretty widely reported as fact. And we're in advanced talks with him. It wasn't really made clear whether he was a permanent deal or a loan, but the word from France appears to be that it's going to be permanent because Lille just want rid of him. I think their owner was pretty vocal in some of his disdain at the player for reasons why he wanted rid of him. He just, thought that the lad had some good offers in the summer and he didn't take them and he couldn't understand it. I think his contract's up in the summer, so it's probably a good time for them to just cut ties. And his background's interesting because he came from a strong youth football background. He's only 20. He's a France under 21 international. He's played at youth level for France all the way through. Had a pretty decent goal contribution record, I think, in the games that he did start last season for Lille. I think someone said he had a goal and 4 assists in something like 11 games, which is pretty decent. So, interesting one for me. Like I say, I don't know much about him, but it does appear to be what we're doing, doesn't it? Finding these supposed wonder kids in the system who've maybe lost their way, offering them a platform to rebuild their career before it gets away from them. So, and we do have a core of young French-speaking players, don't we? So, this one probably makes a lot of sense. The other thing I would point out is Ahmad's going to be gone soon, whether we like it or not. So it's probably, a good time to plan for him going, right? I mean, it's going to happen sooner rather than later, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, well, he fits the criteria, doesn't he? That the ones that we're looking for, and kind of he fits what we're looking for to bring to the club. And it seems like the way Speakman's doing it, and I think he's talked about it as well on a couple of kind of club podcasts as well. He's mentioned that conveyor belt. So you mentioned Ahmad, obviously, and you'd expect to lose some of these players, and whether it's a bid we just can't refuse in players that actually at the club, even Bennett. I mean, yes, if he shows potential in the second half of the season, at the age he's at, a big club might say, well, we want to snap him up before he does well in the Premier League, or the price doubles in 18 months' time or whatever. So someone might take a chance on players like that. Ahmad, he is going to go back to Manchester United, and he's highly unlikely to come back because they're going to want to, even if they put him up for sale, they're going to want to get back as much of that, 35 million or whatever they paid for him before. So we're not realistically going to sign him on a permanent. But because we know he's going to be leaving in the summer, I imagine, well, the way Speaking's working, for a fact pretty much that he's already planning to get his replacement. And if we bring in this guy now, he's got 6 months to sit on the bench, play 10 minutes here and there, play a half, get used to the squad, get used to the team, learn a bit of the language if he needs to, get down Seaburn Beach, have an ice cream, have some fish and chips, all that sort of stuff. And by next season, if we've got him flying by next season, in theory, he could just kind of slot in. But it's just so refreshing to see planning. I mean, how long's it been since we can actually see in the players that we're linked with, the players that we bring in, that the club are looking at what's going to happen in the summer, and they're already looking now for next season. I mean, I don't think we've ever had this at the club, to be honest. I think it's always been a reactionary, who's available, let's get anyone in. Just kind of a mad scramble to get players in. And it's just refreshing to see a plan and try and implement something and stick to it. But yeah, I mean, this lad, he sounds like opposite to Bennett, but left-footed right winger is the description. So Bennett, but on the opposite side of the pitch, which sounds about right. So yeah, I mean, another one, if he comes in, another one that's exciting, could go either way. You never know with young players, but on the face of it, fits the criteria and sounds exciting.
Yeah, I actually had a little chat with the Twitter account. I don't know who's behind it, but it's the account who dropped the news initially, and there's a piece on the website if people want to check that out with a bit more detail in it. But it was interesting in that conversation. They said that Luis Campos, who's the current football advisor at PSG, former sporting director at Lille, had said previously that Lihadji is the best French player of his age. So it's got a bit of a feel of Patrick Roberts to this one to me. I know he's a little bit younger than Roberts, but just a player who's totally been cast aside after being really highly rated when they were a little bit younger. And, I actually think that we've got the perfect conditions for these players to actually really thrive. We've got so many examples of it now littered around the squad. Like, all you got to do is point to the likes of Ahmad, Patrick Roberts, Jack Clark, the Dennis Serkin, Adji Elise. We give kids chances and they get proper chances to play lots of football and, are playing in front of big crowds, big expectation in a competitive league. So there's no reason why this kid couldn't be a massive success for Sunderland if it does come off. And, things change all the time. It might turn out that it's a load of rubbish or somebody else comes in from him and blindsides us. But I would be pretty happy with that acquisition. I think, we do need to plan for life without Ahmad, and you bang on. It gives him like 4 or 5 months to get ready, and that's what we need. The other bit of transfer news, again, this one could be confirmed pretty quickly. Pierre Ekwah, I think it's pronounced, from West Ham. Another French player. He's another French youth international who was previously of Chelsea, now of West Ham. Interesting reading stuff from what their fans have said on social media. A lot of their fans really want to see him play in the first team, but are pretty defeated by the fact that David Moyes is their manager and he's never going to give him a chance. And we know that feeling. So he's been tearing it up for their 21 side in the PL2 this season. He's got 4 goals from midfield, has been described as a box-to-box midfielder. I think he actually described himself as a box-to-box midfielder, but the West Ham website describe him as a powerful defensive midfielder. Quite a big lad, big, athletic, strong, gets around the pitch well. I think it's fair to say we're missing a player like that, especially since letting Jay Matete go. So it can't harm to bring him in and see what he's all about, right? I think it's win-win if we make that signing because we're not desperate for a regular starter in midfield. I think Dan Neil has done a really good job in the last month or so of probably showing that he can replace Corey Evans long term, but that's got to be the thing at the back of our minds. Again, we're talking about long-term succession planning. Corey Evans probably next season. We need to think about life without him, don't we?
I was just about to say that about Corey Evans. It seems like the natural fit, doesn't it, to replace Corey Evans, and if he can kind of learn from him for however long he stays at the club. But this one reminds us a lot of the Elise one, because West Ham fans had a similar reaction to Elise at the time as well. They didn't want to see him go. They wanted him to have more chances in the first team, and obviously with David Moyes there, that's kind of never going to happen. But yeah, another exciting one. But the interesting thing for me is it's a bit different to other windows that we've had or other kind of setups that we've had. That I'm finding this window, which is a strange one, the way Sunderland work now, that they keep it in-house and they don't have that many leaks, that we're not being linked with every man and his dog. Like it seems like every link now has some merit behind it because
yeah.
that it only now comes out and into the kind of public domain when like we're actually doing something about it, or we're making a move for these players, or getting them to
Yeah,
come to the club or whatever. And it's interesting because I mean everybody knows we need a striker and we need one this window. But as far as I know, and I don't troll around social media or anything like that, or read the newspapers, but I haven't seen us being linked with a striker.
no, and that's making me think that there might be something in what Christian Speakman said about Ellis Sims.
Yeah.
He said he was open to the idea of him returning. Have Everton taken him back on the understanding they're going to send him back? Maybe, it's not, and maybe that's why we're not hearing anything, because we've already agreed to bring him back. I think what's fair is that we probably do need. I mean, let's say we did sign Sims, we probably do need a third option, but probably somebody more to replace. Probably replace Diaku, I think, is that just sort of player you can put up front if you need another option. I think the difficulty we've got is that we can't go out and sign a third choice striker because they know the third choice. That's the problem we had in the summer. It's a problem we're going to have now. Who's going to come under them conditions? You're going to get somebody who's not good enough for the league, somebody who's probably a free agent, or somebody who's probably older than the bracket of player we're looking at, and it's not going to happen. So I think your options are pretty much a kid who is prepared to sit on the bench, a bit like a Bennett or a Bar, somebody who's just learning, coming in from abroad, who probably coming in on the understanding you need to acclimatise before you're thrown into this situation. Or we do go down that route of signing an older player, and I can't see us doing it.
No.
But you could be right. It could just be that we're keeping our cards close to our chest. The leaks that we're getting on sort of transfers now are coming from the French media or West Ham. I think West Ham are a club who there's quite a lot of information gets leaked out of that club. They have some. There's actually a guy on Twitter called XWHU employee who has a Patreon account, which I think he leaks, and it's well known that he gets all the information. So leaks out of West Ham are pretty common. But you're right, there's nothing really much coming out of Sunderland, and it's with good reason. They're keeping everything pretty close to their chest. So it's probably likely we'll sign a bunch of players that we don't really know much about until it just about happens, which I'd rather that, to be honest. I'd rather that. So let's just hope that's a theme of the window. It's been a theme of the last few, hasn't it, where we've just got on with the job and not really made a fuss of it. And yeah, pretty chilled. I mean, it might be different if we get battered on Sunday, and somebody really good gets an injury, touch wood, it doesn't happen, but things might change then. But at the minute, I'm pretty relaxed, and I think you're seeing that. Do you think the penny's dropping with fans now that this is just the way we work? Because I'm a bit like you. I don't really look at social media too much, so maybe I'm missing it. But I'm not sensing as much desperation for signings as we've had in previous years from just people I know and people I speak to at work, or I'm not sensing that desperation. People seem pretty relaxed, don't they?
Yeah, I'd like to think there's a bit of confidence in how the club do things now, and it comes out of that. Because what's this? I think this is the fourth window that Speakman's had, and you can see obvious patterns and how they work. And quite often, I mean, they do leave it. I think it was the summer window where they brought in. I think it was Sirkin and a few others kind of quite late in the window. So I don't think he minds leaving it late. I don't think he likes putting all his eggs in one basket and kind of, seeing what happens. Because, I mean, we've seen quite often, especially in January, one transfer can trigger another 10 from other clubs. For somebody makes a move, and the likes of Everton, because Everton are in the crap. If they go out and spend some money on a striker, then suddenly Ellis Sims becomes free and available again, and I'm sure we'll bring him back. I mean, that could happen, any day. Any day Everton could go out and say, right, because they're desperate for a striker to score some goals. So yeah, I mean, there is a bit of confidence, although when I have looked around and seen messages on the message board and things like that, I know there have been some kind of where's this striker comment, because we need one. And last weekend, Diaku was he was the replacement for Stewart when Stewart went off. I think people recognise we need another option up top.
Yeah.
You know, another injury to Stewart, and where are we after that? So, yeah, I mean, I think there is a bit of clamour for that. But on the side of rumours and things like that, I think people are fairly relaxed. Actually, I think people prefer it this way.
I definitely prefer it. I'm just so happy that we're in a position where we can be relaxed a little bit. I know we definitely need another striker, there's no doubt about it. But the confidence I've got is we're not going to go without. I can't see a situation like the one we saw on Netflix where we were like throwing money at Wigan for Will Grigg. That's not going to happen with these guys. I'm just confident of that. I'll be made to eat me words. I'm sure people will be playing this recording back when we don't sign anybody, but there we go. Well, I think that's probably about it, Chris. Let's hope Sunderland manage to beat Middlesbrough at the weekend, but all we want to see is a good performance and don't get beat. That's it for me. I think a 2-2 draw, we both went for that. That would be pretty sweet, but yeah, preferably a win. Always want to win. Cheers, mate. Thanks for joining us, as always.
No worries. I'll be off to check the odds on 2-2 in a
Yeah, everybody else probably won't be because our tips are terrible. And cheers to the listeners. Thanks for hanging in with us this long. We will be back to a more regular schedule hopefully next week, I'm sure, with the review shows, the previews and stuff. So yeah, I know we've been a bit flaky around the last few weeks with Christmas and what have you, but we'll get back to our best, I'm sure. Thank you everybody who donated to the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen fundraiser in December. I haven't mentioned this on a pod, but our final total, we were finally able to announce that last week. We hit 52,000 with a very generous donation of £4,000 from the Turner family, who are obviously behind Full 73. So massive thanks to them. Massive thanks to everybody who backed us. We are already in the planning stage for next year, which I won't reveal any details on, but fingers crossed we'll have a couple of big things for next year. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for backing us on that. Thanks for everything else you've been doing, including reading the articles on Roker Report's website. Keep doing that throughout the week as we build up the Middlesbrough, and we'll catch you later.